battle, and one of those races that we have to win is in Wisconsin. Eric Hovde is the Republican running against the Democrat Tammy Baldwin there. Eric, how you doing, brother?
Good, Mike, and yourself?
Really good to talk to you. I'm doing fantastic. I've had a really interesting show today, though, Eric, to tell you the truth. We had a gentleman call in about 2 hours ago, say we're broke, like the federal government's broke, like trillions of dollars in debt, people are broke, and it's really hard to make ends meet, and I have no hope, and I'm giving up. And then we had a whole hour, people calling in talking about how difficult it is to make ends meet and make rent, and they're having to help out friends and family who can't make it. And I'm looking here at Wisconsin, and then we talked to one of our Breitbart guys who talked about how difficult it is for younger people in particular to get housing. And it turns out Wisconsin has the highest change in median sales price for a house this year in the entire country. So can you just speak to that, how bad the economy is, how tough it is for people of Wisconsin?
I'm out there talking to people every single day, and it's very sad to hear the struggles that people are going through. Look, let me back up and talk about economics and how this all came about. Joe Biden, during, when he took over the presidency, we came out of the lockdowns. We spent 40% more from a federal spending standpoint during the lockdowns to keep the economy afloat. Joe Biden, you would have thought, would have pulled spending back to 2019 levels because all of a sudden the economy got opened back up. Instead, he ended up spending even more. And so, federal spending increased by 2.4 to 2.4 trillion dollars. So he drove up the deficit in a massive way. Well, how does that work? The Federal Reserve, which is the bank for the federal government, had to monetize that through something called quantitative easing. I'm not going to get in the technical nature of that. So they created more money supply. And what is inflation? Inflation is too much money chasing a fixed amount of goods and services. So that was a nice sugar high while it was going on, but eventually inflation took off in a very meaningful way. And what does that do? It devalues everybody's purchasing power. So real wages that people live on declined for 3 years under Joe Biden. That didn't even happen during the great financial recession. So as I say, when people show up to the grocery store, look at the price of butter, look at the price of eggs, go to the meat market, look at what's happened to not just red meat, but fish. I mean, my God, it's like chicken, all that. Look at the price of housing. Housing has skyrocketed. Now, housing is not just apartment, but single family housing. Both of them skyrocketed. And what layers into housing, and I'll come back to housing a bit later, but they put so much rules and regulations that help also spur all that regulatory push. But, look at the price of cars and energy. Look at your auto insurance bill. Everybody out there, go pull and how much your auto insurance or your homeowner insurance bill went up. So all it was a massive backdoor tax. Now, the scary thing is, because we have $35 trillion of debt, we're adding another $1 trillion of debt every 4.5 months. And the interest cost on that debt now is bigger than our Defense Department budget. We're going to have more inflation coming. It's coming down the rate of inflation, but at some point the Federal Reserve is going to have to start monetizing this debt. So they have done such structural damage to our country, I can't even begin to tell you. And it's not just what they've done the last few years. It's what's going to happen in the future. And I can't stand it when I listen to these financial guys get on there talking about Joe Biden's economy. They all, and trying to put the positive spin, they all know all we did was steal from our future, and we've left our kids and our grandkids so much worse off. It's a big reason why I got into this race. Look, I've built many different companies. I understand the financial markets. Sadly, and I don't mean to dump on Republicans, but there's a number of Republican senators and congressmen that played a role in all the spending that has driven us into this mess as well. And a lot of these guys just simply don't understand how our economy works, how globalized and financialized our economy is. So, yeah, I feel so horrible when I talk to some people. I've had young people come up and say to me, I work 2 jobs. I still can't afford to live out, by myself. I have to live with my parents. They're 24, 25, 26-year-olds. Nobody wants to be living with your parents at that age. I've had older people say, I can't, eat meat. I have to eat pancakes for dinner because I can't afford it. So, yeah, this economy is in very bad shape. Some call it the K economy, where the bottom 50% have been crushed. Call it 20% have kind of stayed the same, 20 to 30%, and the top percent, because if you own stocks and bonds and real estate, you've been able to weather it because your assets got inflated. But that's going to erode businesses eventually as well. So it's been really, really tough. And yes, housing's a big issue. And you know what the bad thing is when you're talking about housing? If young people, what happens? You meet a mate, you typically buy a dog because you pre-parent with your dog, and then you want to move into a home. If young people can't buy homes, they're not having as many children, and we need people to have children. So sorry for the long response, but it's bad.
No, was your background in housing? And I asked that, and maybe wrong, but if, I got this whole Wall Street Journal article here. Wisconsin voters seethe over out-of-control housing prices. What's going on there? Yeah.
So, look, the problem with housing, and it's all over the country, and Wisconsin's no different than many other markets, is really severalfold. First of all, the liberal progressive wings that control many of our cities have made it so difficult to build housing. My background is twofold: in banking and in real estate. I have a real estate development company. We build a lot of apartments, but we've looked at trying to build single-family housing on land wheel. But when you get into the impact fees and all the regulations they've put, it has driven up the cost of housing. The National Association of Builders estimate 25 to 30% of a cost of building a new home today is tied in to regulations and fees and taxes by local and municipal governments. So it's a huge part of the problem. And a lot of these progressive lefties, they don't want to see single-family homes. I live in Madison, Wisconsin, a very progressive liberal city. They don't want it because they think it has too much of an environmental impact. They won't say that blatantly, but that's exactly how they think. It's just like they don't like cows. It's crazy.
I was in California for 12 years, and they are explicit about that in California, as Kamala knows, and will not allow single-family housing to be built, and only will allow very dense housing near transit areas. They're very, very explicit about the environmental impact of homes. There's no question about it. We only got about a minute or two. Eric Hovde, running for Senate in Wisconsin, very concerned about election integrity in Wisconsin. I think what happened in Wisconsin with the indefinitely confined voter was the most blatant, obvious red flag of the entire election, I would say. What has been done in the meantime? How can we improve things?
Look, let me first start, and I think you understand this. Wisconsin, if President Trump wins Wisconsin, he wins the presidency. That's why Wisconsin's being fought over more than any other state, both by Kamala and President Trump. We've tightened up a lot of different things. I mean, we're not as bad as Philadelphia and some of these other markets, but we always used to run the cleanest election. So we banned Zuckerbucks. There's been a number of different victories by Wisconsin Institute of Law and Liberty. We've recruited 5,000 poll workers, not just poll watchers, poll workers. So there's been a lot that has been done to really tighten it up. But look, if I can win the Senate race, it not only changes the control of the Senate for the next 2 years, but potentially the next 4 or 6. I'm running against the second most liberal senators in the United States Senate, Senator Tammy Baldwin, as far left as you can imagine, rubber stamp, voted with Joe Biden 95.5% of the time. So, look, if anybody can help me out, these races, I've got more attack ads on me than anybody else. Please go to Eric Hovde, Eric Hovde. Hovde is Hovde, and Eric is with a C. So, me and President Trump are working hard to win this state, and I feel really good about how things are heading.